Welcome to You Are From God, where we open God's Word to discover His image in ourselves and the people around us. I'm Scott Taylor.
And I'm Tyler Hall. Thanks for joining us today. So my kids, Scott, have started getting into Legos, and it's interesting because we go to these secondhand stores where they'll have Legos and you can get them at a discount, and some of them they'll be boxes where they've disassembled everything and kind of put them in bags, and they get the opportunity to build it themselves, and it's pretty neat, and we've had a lot of fun with that. They also have the sets where they're just already built, and the cool thing, the building, the car, or the boat, whatever it is already put together. You can buy it and take it home, and okay, I just like the thing, and I don't want to have to put any effort into it. And I was thinking about this when it came to our topic for this episode, which is about deconstructing faith. This is a big buzzword. It's the idea of, a lot of us have the blessing, I'll call it, to grow up in a household or in an environment where faith is a big component. It is a core aspect of family value. It's something that is part of your life just intrinsically growing up. You're going to church every Sunday, or there are Bibles open and read and discussed in your home, families that pray together. And so all these things are, again, just an immense blessing. And then people, as they grow older, they have to start making decisions for themselves. And a lot of times they'll get to this point where people will say they need to have this deconstruction of faith, which is really breaking things down and trying to put the pieces back together. My concern whenever I hear that, just as a personal aside, is that it's being used as an excuse that, well, this is how my family's done it. This is what I was just spoon-fed growing up. This is what was forced upon me even, and I'm just going to deconstruct my faith. The problem is you can take apart the Lego set, but you got to build something again. You just want to leave the pieces and, okay, I'm just going to do whatever I want to with these pieces and, build something of my own design. Well, you've been given the pieces in that Lego set to build a specific thing. And again, this is where the analogy breaks down a bit, because we're talking about the Legos are meant to be built in the sense of faith to build this one thing. And so you can look at your faith as a pre-built Lego set, and if it breaks, do I know how to put it back together? Do I know where the pieces go? Do I know why these pieces fit together? Or did I start by building it myself? Maybe our parents have an influence on us where they've shown us as we've grown up, this is why we're doing this, and helping along the way. There has to be that personal accountability at some point. But just as we get started with this discussion, it's so vital and important to kind of reflect on ourselves first and see, how has my faith been constructed over the years? How much help did I have along the way? Do I know why I believe what I believe and how things work in sound doctrine according to the scriptures? Or am I relying a lot on things just staying just so and not really thinking too deeply about why things fit together? And I think we actually see some good examples of the benefits and the needs of this conversation and people from the Bible.
I think this is such an important point to make, Tyler. You and I have very different backgrounds as to when it comes to our walk with God.
Mm-hmm.
I can certainly be one of those that would say I grew up in the faith, or I grew up in the church. And the danger for people like me is that you take it for granted, or at least I did for a long time. And you can read about these examples in the scriptures, and you see how, other people took their children to synagogue, or they would go and worship. They would have their children there. Deuteronomy talks about how it's so important to teach the next generation. And quite frankly, the scriptures talk about that a lot. And it continues today. And you have this amazing example in 2 Timothy, the first chapter, when it comes to Timothy himself and what was happening in his life. Paul, beginning in verse 5, says, "For I am mindful of the sincere faith within you, which first dwelt in your grandmother Lois and in your mother Eunice, and I am sure that it is in you as well. For this reason I remind you to kindle afresh the gift of God which is in you through the laying on of my hands. For God did not give us give us a spirit of timidity, but a power and love and discipline." It's interesting, Tyler. I can look at my own life, and the generations leading up to me were members of the church. They were leaders. They were amazing servants. There were a lot of things that they did, and I can get caught up in, or other people can get caught up in, the idea of just try to sneak into heaven or get by because of your last name or because of the faith of somebody else, when the reality is it's every single person's faith. So you look at this situation here in 2 Timothy, the first chapter. It's amazing that his grandmother Lois had this faith and his mom Eunice had this faith. But to the point that you were making earlier, it's really this, as he starts off in verse 5, this sincere faith within you. And so, yes, we're taught. Yes, we're brought to worship. Yes, we go through those different things, perhaps as young children, if you grew up like I did. But at some point, I have to make that my faith. And I have to be willing, as you said, to put the pieces back together as they're supposed to go, and understanding my relationship with God and what that looks like. And so often, to your point, people leave pieces out, or they just don't want to build it again, or, they just are, quite frankly, just lazy, that they're just going to continue trying to slide through life and never really strive to have that relationship with God.
And let's be clear, sometimes you get a bad instruction manual when you're growing up to build the Lego set of faith, right? It is your some instructions are left out, and you're not ever told, what does this have to do with it? And that was my experience, where I knew a little bit about, God and the Bible. For me, it was, I'm going to listen to the person at the front of the room. They have a white collar on. They've gone to school for this. They know where things are in the Bible. They're smarter than me. And so I'm just going to go along with it. And it wasn't until I started reading for myself with the encouragement and guidance and study with other people that I kind of came to realize, I just kind of assumed a lot of things about God and about obedience and about salvation. And I never actually took it into my own power, my own ability to choose. And I would call that a bit of a deconstruction of faith. Again, my fear when I hear that phrase is that it's just, I'm going to raise it to the ground and I don't believe in anything. And then I just I'm going to live my life. And, if I stumble upon God, then maybe I'll start believing in him again. Where this is very much an intentional growing. And there are going to be times that shake us and that make us question, what do I think about this? If somebody practices their religion, their faith, they believe in Jesus maybe, they read the same Bible that I do, but they come to different conclusions. We've looked at recent episodes where some of those are matters of opinion, and we've talked about how we handle those things. But then there are some times where good-meaning people come to different conclusions, and it's different doctrine. And the Bible won't necessarily support those things as a whole. And so understanding why we believe what we believe and really being able to work out our salvation on our own, to have this personal investment with my relationship with God. This is what I love about Paul writing to the Philippians in Philippians chapter 2, 12 and 13. He simply writes, "Therefore, my beloved, as you have always obeyed, so now, not only as in my presence, but much more in my absence, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. For it is God who works in you, both to will and to work for his good pleasure." Important to note here is the idea that there's this onus on the Philippians to work out their own faith, to be intentional in how they are growing. They need to do this with a reverence for God, and we have to be so careful of understanding that that requires me to have that fear, that trembling, and to work out my own salvation, to be growing in it, to desire it with that love that comes from God. Important to note with this too is that the you here is plural. So Paul's not just writing to one individual in Philippi, he's writing to a whole congregation. Why is that important? Well, it's this idea that we have to have our own personal investment in faith, but it also is the work of the church. We're all striving to grow together. We need one another to encourage and build up one another. Our faith and our choice to follow God is individual, but we absolutely need the community of other people in God's family to help us along that journey, and that's not optional.
I think it's interesting in 2 Corinthians, the 13th chapter, and verse 5, and this is the point we're really talking about. I need to test, it says, test yourselves to see if you are in the faith. Examine yourselves, or do you not recognize this about yourselves, that Jesus Christ is in you, unless indeed you fail the test? Tyler, ultimately what this comes down to is that we all have been called to be priests. We all have a responsibility for our faith, our relationship with God, and we need to be willing to look at our lives to make sure that we are following and doing what he has called us to do. And so The importance of all of this is the idea of really taking responsibility to make sure my relationship with God is exactly what it needs to be, what He desires it to be. And it's amazing to even think about the fact that He wants a relationship with us. And it's not based on what family I was born into or what my start in this life was about, but my sincere desire and motivation to be His child, that I can have that amazing relationship with Him because we're all from God. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed it, leave us a rating on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to this program. Be sure to subscribe on your platform of choice so you never miss an episode.
Would you do us a favor and recommend this program to someone you know? We pray this simple act of sharing can encourage both of you in the faith and open up doors for meaningful and Christ-centered conversation. You can find us at youarefromgod.com. Click the connect button at the top of the page if you'd like to send us a question, give us feedback, or offer a suggestion for an episode. Catch up on previous episodes, find the year-long devotional, and more by visiting youarefromgod.com.